Hey guys, welcome back. A few things before we get started. As usual, don't forget about our promo codes. If you're looking for a new CBD to try HOPEWELL Farm CBD. That stuff is amazing. They have other products, skin salves and stuff, which works great for like poison ivy and stuff like that. You can save 10% off all their products with Journey to Truth 10. It's some of the best stuff I've used. I highly recommend it. That link is below. Omnia Radiation Balancer. It's a patch that you put on any radiating device. It's like an EMF protection, but it doesn't actually block it. It harmonizes the frequency into something beneficial to your body. And you can get 10% off of that with promo code TRUTH, all caps. And our newest affiliate, Ascent Nutrition. They have some amazing products like algae oil, their coffee, which Aaron says is the best coffee he's ever tried, pine needle extract, among many other things. I've been taking a pine needle extract. I know that's good for decalcifying your pineal gland, pine tea, all that stuff, but it tastes amazing. And I really think I'm feeling a difference by using it. But we don't have a promo code for those products, but we believe in those products. They're all natural, all organic. And you can find that link below in the description also. So tonight, this is an episode I'm very excited about. I've been looking forward to this one. Samuel Chong reached out to me a month or so ago about this book, The Thiaoouba Prophecy, about a man who was abducted and spent 9 years on another planet, but physically abducted. This isn't like an astral abduction or a dream. This happened physically. He came back and he wrote this book to tell a story. And Samuel, I guess, we're going to let him explain to us how he stumbled across this book, was taken by it, so taken by it that he flew to Vietnam and actually hunted down the author because he didn't actually have an address. From my understanding, he only had a picture and he was able to locate the author. He spent some time with him and he got some insights from the author himself about his trip and his experience on this other planet. The book itself is profound. So spoiler alert, we're going to be breaking it down. We're going to get into a lot of the information in this book. Yeah, there it is right there. Or you could do like I did and print out the whole PDF.
What Tyler did.
And put some clamps on it. Because at the time I could only find like a $70-something copy of it online, but Aaron found a
you got on Amazon for 18.
But that's under a different title.
It's under a different title. That's why you didn't know.
We'll get into all that. But so spoiler alert, we are going to be getting into a lot of the content in this book. Also, trigger alert, this book challenges and shatters belief systems. It really does. If it's true, if it's true, which I believe it is after reading it, I just finished it. To me, it's profound. It's next level. And it's exactly what I was looking for on my journey. And it does shatter a lot of belief systems, especially surrounding religions. But I think it's really crucial because if this information is true, it's life-changing and the world needs to know. So I'm excited to get into this tonight. And welcome to the show, Samuel. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out and introducing us to this book. Like I said, it's quite literally amazing, some next level stuff. And it's been around since the 90s. And it's funny how it's just now made it into my awareness and like it's just now getting traction. And so I'll let you share the story on how this book impacted you, why you decided to fly to Vietnam and find the author and how that whole story happened.
Yeah, so I had this kind of fascination about learning from the best. So I always wanted to learn from ETs that have advanced civilization in order to learn from them, their technologies or their ways of living. So in my subconscious mind, I was searching for such information. So one day I was looking for ET contactees books on Amazon. This book, back then it was titled Abduction to the Ninth Planet. It was selling very expensively, but I checked it out from a library through an interlibrary loan service. And then after reading that, in the very beginning, I thought this is just another book about ET contactees. But when I read the chapter about who is Christ, it really blew my mind. I couldn't find any other book like this one that totally changed my perception about what I used to believe in. And also, especially, it talks about a lot of the ET technologies that really could change our lives. But also it talks about the meaning of life, reincarnation, and also a lot of the things in the Christianity religion. It doesn't really say a lot of good things about the church, but it says very good things about Jesus Christ. So this is very interesting to me. But at the postscript, it says there are more incredible things that the author Michel de Marquet was not allowed to write in the book because we are far from understanding them. And that got me very curious because the content of the book is already incredible enough for me, at least for me. And what's more incredible about it? And I really wanted to know. My curiosity just, I just had to find this, track him down. So that's why I took the journey to Vietnam without knowing where he was living exactly. And I showed a picture of his bungalow to a taxi driver. And at the second try, he took me to the right place and I met the author. And in the very beginning, he didn't tell me anything. He was just frustrated that I was asking all those stupid questions. And but later on, he found out that I could help him to get his book published in China. And afterwards, he invited me for the second time, and that's when he really told me that one thing he was not allowed to write in the book.
Now, is that something that you're able to share now, or is that still something that he told you in confidence?
For the people who read the book, I can say that this is something that they should really know about the stories in the Bible, the Old Testament, and also the books that didn't really go into the Bible in the very beginning. For example, the book of Enoch. They also need to know a lot of information about geographies, and because that information is very specific, just like other content, other information revealed or disclosed in the book, very specific but verifiable. And also to the curious readers, I wrote an article about it, and it's on my website. It's like a puzzle or like a riddle. People read between the lines are going to know what it is about, but not exactly what it is. So they're going to have to really work their way through and to really know what's going to happen.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check that article out. And one of the things that struck me with the book also is it really tells a history of planet Earth, at a time before our moon was here, and when the first civilizations landed in Australia and then Burma, and how those civilizations thrived at one point and they were taken out. And it really goes into Atlantis and Lemuria and Egypt and all the offsprings of their civilizations, and just how this planet was really just a hodgepodge of different ET races. And it's absolutely fascinating to me. And not only the history of the planet, but his account also of his own experiences in life on another planet, and which is profound because they explain like there's 9 regions of planets, and their planet is the 9th region, which is like the highest, I guess, as far as densities go. Would you mind touching on that a little more from your understanding?
Yes, he spent actually 9 days on the planet Thiaoouba. According to the Thiaoubans, the ETs that have a very advanced civilization, there are a total of 9 different categories of planets in the universe. We people on Earth, we are living on a category 1 planet, like elementary school students. And the Thiaoubans, they are living on a category 9 planet, like college professors. So they have been really guiding us throughout history, just like mentors, showing us the right direction to go and to live and to think. But they have been doing that relatively indirectly, but they actually helped a lot in the past, which were really recorded in the stories in the Bible. So, for example, the destruction of the 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, was one of their interventions. There were also other interventions that they did. For example, during World War II, Germany was about to develop the atomic bomb, but they prevented from happening. They allowed the United States government to develop the atomic bomb earlier than the Germans, so that the World War II could end much earlier and with less casualties. They also helped a lot of people on Earth to by like this author, Michel de Marquet, having him to write a book and to really reveal a lot of the mysteries that people have been wondering about. For example, what happens in the Bermuda Triangle, why so many planes and ships disappear, and who built the Great Pyramid and for what purposes? What about the statues on Easter Island? And what about the human energy field, the auras? What significance there? So many things that can be verified, and it's very logical the way that they explained a lot of things. For example, for the Great Pyramid, it says it's an energy center. As a tool built by the Thoth, the person from Atlantis. Over 9 years of time using anti-gravitational technologies and also supersonic vibrational systems to cut the stones in a very precise manner. So this resonates to me, and it seems to be very logical, unlike other contactees who say that they got the information from ET saying that the Great Pyramid was built by 200,000 slaves over maybe 40 years or maybe a long time. So that really doesn't make any sense to me if it was explained that way. But this book makes so much sense, and it resonates me, not so much for this, but also for the stories in the Bible.
Right. And that's where I say it's profound and belief shattering, because if it's true, like it straight up tells you that take the word, well, the original Bible, the original one that was untampered with, even still was a compilation of stories written by scholars at the time, and even still wasn't entirely accurate, but they said take out the word God or gods and replace it with the Thiaoubans, and then you have an accurate account of history on Earth, because they were the ones who were interacting with civilization at that time, where the people on Earth thought that they were gods. And when they talked about coming from the heavens, that was really just their ship. Like the heavens was their ship. And it's like, it takes all the mystery out of it, which is like upset some people, because I think that's part of what entices people into religions, is there's always these unknowns and these mysteries that leave you guessing. But when you put ETs in place of angels and God in this case, which it was never meant to be translated that way or interpreted that way, it really changes things. And especially, like you said, the story of Jesus. And so this is really different. They explain that Jesus and Christ are two different people.
Yes. So when I was reading the Bible, I really didn't believe anything written in the Bible. I mean, as a Chinese myself, I'm sometimes very suspicious about whether Jesus really existed when I was reading the Bible the first time or for a long period of time. Because I'm thinking, like, how could someone perform all the miracles? But after reading this book, it really made me believe in the stories in the Bible. And but then there are some people say, oh, Jesus went to India. There were records of that. And also, this book made me think, why didn't Jesus perform any miracles? I mean, why there was no record of him performing miracles before the age of 30? That really got me thinking. And this book explains that the Jesus that was born out of Virgin Mary was the Jesus that really came from the embryo implanted or planted by the ETs into the uterus of Virgin Mary. Mary was indeed a virgin. They were doing that just to fulfill the prophecy that Messiah was going to be born out of a virgin. But when a person is born that way, out of an embryo, implanted embryo, the person has to go through the river of oblivion, forgetting all the things happened in his or her past lives, forgetting all the skills or the knowledge of performing miracles. So that's why the Jesus born out of Virgin Mary couldn't perform miracles, but he was a very spiritual person, very knowledgeable, very smart, very intelligent. And he actually went to India and also traveled to China and died in Japan. So that's why there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. Remember, this book was written in the early 90s or late 80s. There was no internet at that time. And And it talks about the Shingo village in Japan having a tomb of Jesus Christ, and also a tomb next to the tomb of Jesus Christ, which is supposed to be the tomb of his brother. And I did some research and found out that people in that village in Japan sing a song in which resembled the ancient Hebrew language. And people there had a lot of, or still have a lot of customs that are so different from the rest of Japan. So people wonder where that came from. On the other hand, Christ, who performed all the miracles, who died on the cross, and then resurrected 3 days after, was actually one of the ETs, one of the Thiaoubans. They did that was to really make people believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ, because people at that time are really similar to the people in our times. We have to see, we have to really experience, we have to really get a lot of proof in order to believe that person. So they had to have someone who could perform miracles to show the people that he was indeed the Messiah, so that his teachings could be learned and remembered and believed. So that's why Jesus Christ was able to perform all the miracles, because he was one of the ETs. And his main purpose was just to preach spirituality and love. He resurrected 3 days after, just to show people that there was life after death. There is life after death, and there is reincarnation. But somehow the concept of reincarnation got erased from the Bible by the Catholic Church, the church councils.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what's fascinating to me, is that so Jesus ended up in Japan and died there, and the two graves there, one is Jesus and one is actually isn't his brother, but it contains a lock of hair from his brother that he carried around with him, and which is really interesting. And then so when Christ, as we know it, appeared back in the desert, people thought that it was Jesus returning, if I understand that correctly, but it was actually a Thiaoouban who somehow came in human form and was basically, they weren't miracles. It's just the human potential, what we're capable of at our fullest potential. And it looks like magic and it looks like miracles to somebody who doesn't know any better. And he was showing them what was possible. And then whenever he was he actually knew he was going to be crucified, because he saw his whole life before he came here. So he knew that he was coming here to be crucified. And after that, 3 days later, they literally came, the Thiaoubans came and took him from the grave, revived him on the ship, and then put him back. So it wasn't like, I don't know, this miraculous resurrection. They were just using their technology to revive him. And it makes so much more sense to me because of what we talk about on the show all the time. We know the technologies that are available, and why wouldn't they be using them then? And it's interesting that they had to, they were allowed at this point to intervene, but they can't always intervene because of universal law. And they explain that over and over in the book.
Yes, they choose certain time point, critical time that they intervene. They don't intervene a lot because they are looking to give us an opportunity or environment to learn and to develop our spirituality on our own. For example, I will use this analogy. I'm a person who like to solve a lot of problems. I mean, if I solve the problems on my own, I would learn a lot more than if my parent just give me the answers directly. Right. I mean, I like to find my own ways to resolve certain things. I think the ETs are doing the same thing right now. They're allowing us to learn, to uncover the mysteries of the universe, the meanings of life, and not to intervene us by giving us these solutions directly.
Yeah, exactly. It's all a lesson. It's a school, really, basically. And they even show, and there's one page in the book that goes through all these different versions of the Bible that are wrong, that have been changed intentionally for the greed of whatever religion it was. And Aaron, I mean, you can talk about that more than I can, as far as, I mean, you grew up in that.
Yeah,
and
I did.
And that's,
there's even a lot of mistranslations on top of there's the Council of Nicaea, where they decided what books are going to go into the Bible and then which ones aren't. And all the ones they left out are like the Book of Enoch and all the ones with the really empowering information of like our true power and potential. Of course, they're gonna leave those out because they don't want the control systems, don't want that us being aware of that, because they can't control us if we are empowered. They need to keep us in fear of hell. They created the whole idea of hell, which is not biblical. It's a mistranslation completely. Every word in the Bible that gets translated as hell does not mean our modern day concept of hell. And even the word God is usually a mistranslation. Elohim means the shining ones, plural. It means plural of like some kind of beings that came from the heavens. So it's like ETs. Right. So when you really read what the Bible actually says, even after all that, just the Greek and the Hebrew text, and then you really understand what the words actually mean, not how they get translated, and then a different meaning assigned to the translation, you can see the Bible says something completely different than what we're taught and what Christians are taught. And the whole doctrine that's kind of like, that modern day Christianity has now, when you're like, well, where did this come from? Well, when you do your research, you realize it came from the Roman Catholic Church, and that's Rome. Rome was basically what we call the cabal, right, or the the current deep state globalists, people trying to enslave humanity. Well, that was Rome. That's where so much of the Christian doctrine comes from, because they used those true teachings and the movement that was created. They're like, okay, we need to adopt this, but then like make it our own version
to their benefit.
Right. And how can we keep people in fear and use this to, as a control system, rather than actually trying to teach people the truth,
empower them,
empower, because that's the last thing they want. So when I understood that, I'm like, oh, the whole Christian doctrine comes from that. So there's all these truths in it. There's all these beautiful truths in it and wisdom in it, but there's all this lies and mistranslations and stuff in it as well. And you got to be able to, if you understand that, and then you can read it, and then you can kind of like weed out that stuff out and see the good stuff, mm-hmm, and the truth that's in there.
And they also explain on one page how they give an example of the Bible, and they go through and show how every other line it's contradicting itself.
Yeah.
And mm-hmm, it also talks about, so the Hebrews are actually a race of ETs that crash landed here from the planet Hebra. And at that time, when they landed here, they were the most advanced race on the planet. And that's where the entire Bible stemmed from, was the original survivors of that crash. And would you mind touching on that a little bit? Because that part is actually fascinating.
Yes, the Hebrews, the Jewish people, originally actually came from Category 3 planet. Actually, the author Michel de Marquet confirmed it. And they were 2 levels up from us at that time. And they crash landed on Earth in southern Russia. And then, so according to this book, it talks about how they survived on a lower level planet. And because they they have been living on a planet which really doesn't belong. They don't really belong here because they belong to a Category 3 planet. They have been really experiencing a lot of difficulties, persecutions, and also jealousy, hatred. And this is actually part of the reason that they have been facing so much challenges, so many challenges on Earth. So basically, the Jewish people, the Hebrews, they are very spiritual, and they were very spiritual, and that's why they were the chosen people, because the Ethiopians didn't really want such a spiritual group of people to go to the wrong path, or to decay like the rest of people on Earth, because the Romans at that time, they were really indulged in a lot of materialistic aspect. They did a lot of things that they shouldn't have done, such as like having a lot of sexual activities with animals or things, or using drugs. So the Ethiopians really wanted to save the Jewish people. That's why they chose the Jewish people. That's why they're the chosen people.
Right. And it also explains that these Hebrews who crash landed, so there was like 8 of them, and there was an explosion while they were working on their ship, and only 3 survived, 1 man and 2 females. And that's actually where the story of Adam and Eve came from, and which is interesting because their names were never Adam or Eve. There wasn't just 2 females. I mean, there wasn't just 1 female. There was 2 that he impregnated. I forgot the names of the actual people, like Ronanan, Diva, and Levita, or something like that.
Yes.
And that's where the story of Adam and Eve stemmed from. It was never this thing that was written by the scholars. And so right off the bat, that was misinterpreted. If you want to add to that.
Yes, that's true. And also remember, the Bible was written at least 2,000 years ago. And if when I was reading the Bible, I found the Bible used a lot of analogy or like descriptions that are very easy for the people at that time to understand. So it's like us explaining the dangers of atomic bomb to a caveman. So we have to use a lot of descriptions or analogies in order for the caveman to understand. So similarly, the Bible was written this way. The teachings of Jesus Christ was done just to make people at that time to understand better. So now we have advanced technologies. We have a lot of evidence of reincarnation. We also have a lot of different things that are really, I mean, modern people can more easily understand a lot of things than 2,000 years ago. I think it's time for people to really rethink about the meaning of life and the purpose of a lot of things that have been happening. One point in one sentence in the Bible that really got me is the kingdom of God is within you. We really can connect to the source, the creator, on our own without going through an intermediary like an agency. So we don't need to rely on the clergy or the church to lead us to God or the source. We can just do our own, because when God created every one of us, it inserted a tiny small portion of itself into our physical body so that we can really connect to him or to God at any time through meditation or through like prayers. Sometimes we can also get a lot of knowledge just by having a good night of sleep, because there's a French proverb or saying that night brings counsel. So when we face life challenges, when we don't know where to go, we might just meditate or have a good night of sleep. If it's going to be good spiritual growth, the answer will be provided to us because we are connected to the source.
Right. And it's in every one of us and every living thing and being in the universe. And this book also explains all the way like how the universe was created by source. And it's like it has a lot of answers, but it also has a lot. It doesn't have a lot. Also, it kind of gives you a brief synopsis of things, but it doesn't go into great detail. Some things it does, but even so, take the whole Bible part out of the book. This book is so much more than that. It talks like go back to the original inhabitants of Earth and Lemurian times and what actually happened there in Atlantis and Easter Island, and how so the statues on Easter Island, it explains that those statues aren't supposed to be in the likeness of the beings but they represent different star nations at that time that were visiting. So it's like it's more of a dedication to them. So those stones were never actually meant to resemble the actual beings at that time. And so that's one of the answers. It kind of clarifies that. And obviously most of Lemuria is underwater, but Easter Island was actually like the core of the quarry where a lot of those stones were quarried from, that they built their pyramid in Lemuria, I think, which was like 3 times larger than the Great Pyramid in Egypt. And it goes into all those details.
Yes, this book is very different from any other book that I read. It has a very specific information, a lot of details that actually can be verified. For example, besides Lemuria, also talks about the other, like where Lemurians came from. They actually came from another planet called Arimo X3. So about 250,000 years ago, because of overpopulation on that planet, they were exploring another planet for them to migrate to. So they found they look at Mars. They also look at the Earth. At that time, there was life on Mars, but because Mars was cooling down at its core, so it was a dying planet. So they look at Earth and explored a little bit and found that continent back then called Lemuria. But then in the northeastern corner of Lemurian continent, there was a small group of Chinese people living there. So being Chinese people, they were really suspicious. They're still very suspicious now. So they kind of attacked the Arimo people from X3. So they had to retreat, and because they didn't really want to fight a war. So they used the back of the moon, the rear side, the far side of the moon as a transfer station. So they built alien ET bases on the back side of the moon so that they can migrate step by step. So that's why we nowadays find evidence of ancient life forms on Mars, and also something interesting or alien structures on the far side of the moon. So I find that very interesting because this book contains information that can be verified in the future. I mean, when the book was written, people didn't know about it, but after a few years or so many years, more evidence came in and proves that the facts written in the book.
Right. Yeah, it's all incredible. And it talks about like even small details, like in Lemuria, whenever he was, they astrally traveled there and showed him like what life was like there and how it was thriving, and there was spaceports but whenever their king at the time had passed away, they were having this major celebration, and the author was so confused because he didn't understand why they were celebrating instead of mourning. And we have it backwards. They said, no, that they look at it as that king being freed from his restraints, his astral body being freed from the restraints of the physical vessel. And they know it's a glorious time for him because he's evolving and he's moving on in his soul's journey. And they understood that. So it was a big celebration and no one was sad. And it's so opposite now. We're taught to mourn and be sad when we lose our loved ones. It's completely backwards.
Yes, because the king of Lemuria really serves the people well. They knew that he was going to move up the ladder to go to a higher category of planet. Actually, this is a key thing, is that the meaning of life is actually a learning experience. The life challenges that we face every day are actually lessons to be learned. It really depends on how we respond to the challenges, how we gain spiritual lessons by responding to certain difficult situations. So the king of Lemuria really did well, served the people, and really people loved him very much. So they knew that he was ascending to a higher category, so they were celebrating. On the other hand, if we really didn't take this precious opportunity well, if we just didn't do well in this lifetime, then we are going to get some kind of karma, whether it's good or bad. So this is a very important information in the book. So life is actually something we should take very seriously as an opportunity to grow spiritually, to develop our spirituality.
Right.
This is actually verified by people who have had near-death experiences. They had a life review after their passing away. So they reviewed everything happened in his or her life, how they behaved, how the other people behaved, and this is really something that that we should take very seriously. That take this important lesson.
Right. And I forget how it's exactly worded in the book, but they said the entire purpose of the physical vessel is for the soul's evolution. It's not like nothing else. Like at the end of the day, the entire purpose is the soul's evolution and our growth.
Yes, that's right. We really need to know that there's life after life and there's life after death. And we need to know that we have different lessons to learn. We have different purposes in life, different missions in life. And this is something that people, especially Christians, I think a lot of Christians, they just think that after death, if they really believe in Christ, they will go to heaven. That's really not the case. Remember, if, for example, Hitler, he believed Christ, and then after he died, would he immediately go to heaven? That's not the case at all, because he killed so many people. He would really have those kind of consequences happen to him. He would kind of take he would feel how millions of Jewish people died, how the sufferings of those people, and that's he wouldn't go to heaven immediately. He would go step by step and to learn the lessons, move up to the ladder. So it's more logical than what the current Christians believe.
Right, and they also
Right.
were you gonna say something?
No.
Oh. They also explain how the light that you go to is actually not heaven, but it's your higher self. That's actually you're merging with your higher self, and that's the light that you see whenever you cross over. And it's really interesting. They explain how the astral body, like 19% of it goes back to source, and then the remaining percentage reunites with your higher self, and therefore reincarnates wherever else it's supposed to reincarnate. But then if that 19% doesn't go back to source and it gets trapped here, that's what makes up what we would call a ghost. And it's so the astral body is actually made up of electrons. So it's actually not, it's actually has a physical element. That's why you can see it. And that's why people see ghosts. It's a ghost is actually 19% of that individual's astral body.
Yes, we have our higher selves. And when our physical bodies die, 81% of the electrons that make up of the astral body goes back to the higher self after 3 days. So it remains on Earth for 3 days and then reunites with the higher self after 3 days. So that's why Christ resurrected after 3 days. So there's a reason for that. And the other 19% remains on Earth as ghosts until either they're recycled by nature or when they recycled with the next lifetime, the astral body of the next reincarnated body. So that's why a lot of people see ghosts. I actually, after reading this book, I searched for people who say that they can see ghosts. And there is a person named Michael Corey that I really met him face to face. And then I asked him a lot of questions regarding ghosts, what he says, what his experiences and interactions with ghosts. It really matches with what described in this book, in which the electrons have memories. And because of static forces, they resemble the shape of the body when the person was alive. So that's why he could see for example, in my office, there was a dental assistant, a lady who just a ghost that falls here. And then he spoke to her and had a few conversations. So there's really nothing to be afraid of ghosts. They're just electrons when you think about it. And they get recycled when it's time for them to go. And if you really don't like ghosts, if you think that they bother you, just use a lighter, because fire kind of repels electrons. So that's a way to kind of make ghosts go away.
Oh, so just burn your house down.
Yeah, a small lighter.
Yeah, it's so very fascinating. Like I said, this is some really next level stuff. And they also talk about the auras, being able to see the auras. And actually the Hebrews and the people back then could see auras. And that's why when they're painted or drawn, they're depicted with a halo. And all the halo is part of your aura. When you're resonating or vibrating at a specific frequency, at a high enough frequency, it appears as a golden ring and what we call the halo. But it's nothing more than, if we were able to see auras, that's what we would see in an advanced being.
Yes. After reading this book, I did a lot of research on auras, or human energy field. There have been a lot of research studies on that too. There are aura cameras around, but those are not, in my mind, not that accurate. I'm trying to develop something that's more accurate. And people like a former NASA scientist called Barbara Brennan wrote 3 books on auras and how she was able to foretell what illness a person would have just by looking at the colors of auras. For example, when she sees like there's a gray or darkness in the liver area, normally about 3 or 6 months later, the physical symptoms would appear. And also there's a person named Rosalind Brewery, and she can see auras too. She tells a lot of stories about how she was able to see, to predict which football was going to win the game just by looking at the auras of the players. Normally, the players with a stronger aura would win the game. Same thing would apply to horse races. Like she would be able to tell which horse would win the race. And so a lot of very interesting information. And same thing about like the effects of drugs or marijuana or hallucinogens on the colors of auras. I remember she said that the people who smoke marijuana or hallucinogens, their colors of aura are normally kind of abnormal or ugly. So that shows that there's a danger of people using hallucinogenic drugs. So I think this kind of alerts a lot of the people who don't necessarily have this information.
Right. And so they also explain, Michel, when he was on the planet, he noticed that all the beings were wearing specific colored clothing, specific to the individual. They handed him a robe that was his own color. He put it on and he felt exhilarating. Like he was, it was like this blissful feeling. He had all this energy and he thought there was some technology in the robe, but they just explained to him, no, it's a color that matches your aura. And when you wear a color that matches the color of your aura, it gives you those feelings and it actually heals you. And they explain that we can do that on Earth. If we knew what color our aura was, we could wear colors to match it and we could feel amazing. That's why sometimes we just feel off some days or whatever the case is. It could have a lot to do with the colors that you're wearing and the materials that you're wearing. And they even went as far as saying you could paint like your bedroom where you sleep. If you understood the color of your aura, you can paint your room that color and you actually heal you while you sleep. It's such an advanced technology and so simple, but it's just lost because we can't see auras.
That's right. So right now I have been looking for people who can see auras to look at my auras and also the auras of my friends. And I find a lot of very interesting descriptions or analysis or readings in which the person that I know who can see auras can tell whether 2 people get along well or not just by looking at the interactions of the auras of the 2 people. For example, 3 of my friends actually came to my office the other day, and then he was here, and his name is Roger. He looked at the auras of the 3 people and just immediately told them that they're a really harmonious and loving family because their auras kind of mesh together. And then he also says that if he sees there's a kind of straight dividing line between the auras of 2 people, that means the 2 people either they don't get along or they have some kind of boundaries between them. So and also he looked at the auras of some famous people, which are quite interesting. For example, I gave him the aura of a very famous Chinese whistleblower. And he says the aura is very strong and have a certain color. And also famous people like the leaders of our country and other countries. So very revealing information that matches my experiences as an interpreter, because I sometimes interpret some of the supporters of the certain political parties. And then they get some information when they were telling the Chinese delegation. And that information matches with the aura colors of what Roger saw.
Right. I want to get into some of the technology of this guy, what he experienced, some of this technology, which one of the things that struck me right off the bat is when he went to, when he was taken onto the craft, the lights were blinding him. And he was like, oh my God, how do you handle these lights? And they kind of laughed and they said, there are no lights. And he's like, what do you mean? I can't even open my eyes. And they explained to him that it's not a light. It's actually a color. It's the color of the wall. The color itself is luminescent. So it's not even a technology. It's just a color that we don't have here on Earth. I don't know if you want to add to that at all about the technology.
Yes, the first color that he experienced was yellow. And then the second color was blue. They say that the yellow color and blue colors were used just to disinfect him, getting rid of the bacteria and certain viruses in his body. I did some research on that, and I found that the blue color has antiviral and antibacterial effect. It's really been thoroughly researched by a lot of scientists. And there's a paper by Harvard Medical School that listed, I think, a few dozens of or tens of experiments that showed that certain wavelengths of blue color have antibacterial, antiviral effects. So actually, if we really use this kind of technology, we can do a lot of benefit. And just making like a light that gives out blue color is not that difficult, and it's very inexpensive. On the other hand, if we do that, a lot of manufacturers manufacture this kind of blue light disinfection kind of tools. A lot of other companies are going to go bankrupt because this is more effective than the other kind of harmful disinfection methods.
Right.
So this is a dilemma that we are in. So this book actually talks about a lot of things that are that can be improved, such as money. Money is the root of all evils. If we really if we really do a lot of research, there are really kind of inexpensive technologies that can be developed that benefit the whole humanity. But because of the special interest groups and because of the shareholders of the companies, they really want to sell their own products that are not necessarily that beneficial.
Right. It's very true. And in every sci-fi movie, almost all of them, when they get out that healing technology or that laser, it's a blue light. It's a blue light. They're scanning whatever. It's blue to show the Orville, Star Trek. I mean, it's always a blue light. They're telling you disclosure in these movies. But what I found fascinating about them explaining that the wall, it wasn't a light, but it was the color, that solves the mystery of all these whistleblowers and experiencers that talk about these hallways and caverns and tunnels being lit up, but they didn't know the source of the light. What if the source of the light is actually the color of the wall itself, and it's the color that's luminescent, and it's not actually the electricity? And to me, that's very fascinating. And they also talk about how the Thiaoubans, they have night vision, what we would call night vision. They can see just as good at night as they can during the day. Well, so they don't have any lights on their planet, and no lights at all on their planet because of that. Well, go back to Egyptian times, ancient times, even Native America, they have a lot of structures and temples and pyramids with these rooms that are pitch black that they couldn't figure out how they were lighting up these rooms. And there was no evidence of fire or soot. Well, what if the beings weren't humans, but they were more advanced ETs that had night vision, and they didn't need lights to light up those pyramids and those temples? There's something I found very interesting in that book also.
Yes, it reveals other technologies that can give a lot of inspirations to us. For example, water can be made from air, and the other way around, water can be split into oxygen and hydrogen atoms. And they mention specifically about the importance of hydrogen engines on Earth. They say that back in the 80s, when the book is written, that hydrogen engines were already invented or developed, but they were kind of suppressed by the oil companies and also a lot of interest groups. I did research on that. There's a person called Stanley Meyer who developed a car that ran on water in the 70s. What he did was that he used a special kind of catalyst and to make a specific vibration that can cause resonant effect to the covalent bond between hydrogen and oxygen in water. So when there's a resonant effect, it makes the hydrogen and oxygen atoms much easier to be broken. So that's when he used this kind of method. He used this method to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen and use hydrogen as the source of energy for his engine. Mm-hmm. This is actually pretty easy to do. A lot of people have done that, but no one has really commercialized it, wide scale.
Well, and that's because of the oil companies. That's exactly what happened. Like William Tompkins talks about being in the think tank at McDonnell Douglas or Douglas, whatever it was at the time. And so they would go and recruit all the brightest minds, all the people working on the hydrogen engines and all the stuff, bring them in, develop out these technologies to their fullest extent, and then they would shut down the program and bury that and burn and just get rid of all the evidence, all the blueprints, everything, so that no one else, they wanted to hoard up everybody that was developing it, master it in these black budget programs, and then put a lid on it so it could never get out to the public. So they were actively shutting that down. And it's really sad. It's really sad.
Yeah. But also a lot of inventors, they try to apply for patents. That's a clue given off to the special interest groups. So if people really want to commercialize such technologies, they should do that privately, use social media, and to really disclose how they do that so that people can duplicate it at zero cost. So this is the way to go. If they really want to benefit the humanity, they should do that this way. But if they try to apply for patents, then they're not going to succeed at all.
Right, exactly. And that's, you're shooting yourself in the foot by applying for a patent. So another thing I found interesting is they said that the worst pollution on Earth is noise pollution. It's worse than anything. They said, worse than the air pollution, the water pollution, the chemicals. Noise pollution is actually more detrimental to our astral body than anything. They said the noise that a motorcycle makes is more harmful to you than the pollution coming out of the exhaust pipes.
Yes, 3 times more damage. Right. Because it damages the body, the astral body that we cannot see. Certain vibrations are going to cause the electrons to behave in a way that erases the memory and also in a way that, this is the first podcast that's the noise, the danger of noise is mentioned. I try to bring this idea to a lot of the other people, even the people who do a lot of research on the damaging effects on noise. When they read this book, they say, oh, this is science fiction. They don't believe anything like this, even though they believe that noise is damaging to human health. We are living in very interesting times. Noise is damaging to our human body, and I did a lot of research by asking people who can see auras if they hear like a loud noise, what effects that noise has on the aura of that person. It's always like the answer always is, oh, the aura kind of shrinks, or the aura gets some kind of scary looking, something like that. This is the area that I like to do more research on, and I really want to ask people to have faith in the information contained or disclosed in the book. Just try to avoid places in which loud noises occur.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's true. I mean, and then obviously that's why it's been weaponized against us too. All these frequencies, they change the frequency of the music. And not only are we dealing with noise, now we're dealing with radiation and 5G and all that stuff. And it's really upsetting because noise is bad enough, but we talk about EMF, radiation, like what is that doing to our astral bodies? So we have, it's amazing we're even walking around still, to be honest. But man, we're only scratching on the surface of what this book contains. I like to go back to the very beginning when they talk about the people who landed here in Australia and Burma and the animals and plant life they brought with them, such as the kangaroo or the black boy plant in Australia, which was not indigenous to Earth, and it actually took generations before it caught on. But by that time, that they brought that because that's what the kangaroo ate. But they brought the kangaroo because that's what they ate. It's really interesting. And then I think they explain like lettuce, dogs. I forget. There's a whole list of things that are not actually indigenous to our planet that we think are.
Yes, indeed. The first group of people that came to Earth actually were the black people and the yellow people. And the black people landed in Australia, and the yellow people landed in Burma, today's Burma. The book is very specific and has a lot of details, and it talks about back then, Australia was like that. Back then, it was like that. The continents were different from nowadays. So it really incorporates plate tectonics theory. So like in science fiction, people don't mention anything like that. But this book explains how the Earth, even the continents, were like before, like 1.35 million years ago. And a lot of, back then there were advanced civilizations, but then somehow a group of the black people from Australia kind of separated from the main group and went to Africa. And there in Africa, they had a lot of issues with the clergy because the priests tried to take advantage of the people there by disallowing their freedom and their independent thinking and enslaving them. And that caused a lot of issues. So that's a very interesting history.
Yeah.
Repeating itself.
They said that Africa was the first place on Earth that the rank or the class system was introduced, the rich and the poor. And that's whenever that group broke away from the original Australians, whenever they went to Africa, they left because they didn't like the beliefs or whatever, the belief system or their governing system. Then they wanted to start their own. And unfortunately, that was the one that ended up monopolizing our planet in the long run, or that mindset anyway. But they also, going back to the continents and stuff, they explained that Antarctica was connected to Australia back then, and it was all one continent. And they explained how the geography of the Earth was completely different, and at that particular time there was no moon, which I found interesting.
Yes, the moon was captured afterwards, and back then the people in Africa had a lot of. There was that kind of event with the involvement or intervention of the ETs of the Thiaoubans to the priests in Africa, to the people in Africa, and then afterwards. Things got better and they were on the right path. And afterwards, there was some kind of yellow fever, this kind of issue that kind of spread it to the people in Australia and in China. And the yellow people invented or discovered the vaccine for the yellow fever. And then they gave it to the black people in Australia. Showing friendship because people got along very well at that time. And also the Black people helped yellow people. So people were living very peacefully for a long time until the asteroids hit the Earth, and so that kind of made a lot of the civilizations disappear. It's unfortunate that we had a kind of a flood after the asteroid hit the Earth. It hit it split into three parts. One hit the Red Sea, the other hit the East Timor area, and the other, the largest one, hit the Galapagos Island area. So I find that to be very interesting because the book kind of details what really happened in the past that we can verify nowadays. For example, the Galapagos Island, there's an area in which people think or guess that there must be an asteroid beneath the lagoon or the circle of water. So it's everything matches with what we see today.
Right. They also describe that why we became so primitive is whenever these people get wiped out, it's just like us. Like, yeah, we're advanced to a certain extent, but do we know how to make a cell phone? Do we know how to build a computer? Do we know how to use and develop this technology? Not everybody does. So if some people get wiped out and just like basic civilians are left, they are going to devolve because they don't understand how to develop that stuff. And it's really interesting to think of it that way.
Yes. The book really kind of implies that we need to think more independently and not just to take what's granted or what's told by the authorities. We really need to have our own intuitive and logical thinking. This book tells that there is a group of financiers that control everything and try to influence everything. And when I met the author, Michel Desmarquet, he told me that Tao, the ET in this book, told him that there are 12 families that people don't know who they are that influence and control the whole world. And I would presume that the 12 families Tao was referring to are not the 12 families that you can find on the internet. Because the more I research into it, the more I think they're really playing behind the scenes. So that really makes us need to really think what we should take on the mainstream media or the media in general. Because, I've been on a lot of podcasts, including Coast to Coast. A lot of subjects cannot be spoken to. I mean, I can only allude or just to hint that to the audience that there are a lot of licensed medical doctors that cannot speak on certain topics on social media. I can only say as far as this. I cannot say any more because otherwise the videos won't show up. So I just have to really bring people attention that we are in a very, very interesting time in which media tend to believe in what they so-called the scientists or the authorities. We really need to go into the alternative media to find out what's really happening around the world, especially my home country, China. Being a Chinese myself, I sometimes feel very sorry about what happened in Wuhan. And it's just that people seem to take for granted what the government says. And I think there's more into that. And really, the more, just like this book touches a lot of topics superficially, doesn't go into details. So this is the same thing happening here nowadays. We see certain things happen. We really need to find out why that happens. And really need to find out the reason in order to make the right decision.
Right. Spot on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
And one last thing I'd like to touch on is how when they actually took him to a parallel Earth, a parallel universe before they boarded the craft. And would you mind going into that a little bit? Because that was the very beginning of the book. And that's the part I need to go back and refresh myself on, because there's so much information you can't retain it all in one shot, you know?
Yeah, in one reading for that. Yeah, the author suggests people to read the book at least 3 times. And I read it more than 5 times or 6 times. I still need to go into the book into more detail to find additional information. So the parallel universe is actually like ribbons in the Earth's atmosphere. So people or spaceships or maybe ships or planes near that ribbon or the parallel universe get sucked into it. But the ETs kind of utilize the parallel universe just to hide themselves from other people on Earth. So they don't want them to be seen by people on Earth. So that's why they took Michel Desmarquet into that parallel universe first, and then before taking him onto the spacecraft, which was also in the parallel universe. So in the parallel universe, Michel Desmarquet saw a lot of very interesting people. He saw people wearing medieval clothes, and also people like cavemen, like ancient people, who he really couldn't communicate with. So in a parallel universe, as explained in this book, time stops. So people just remain there forever. They don't age, they don't feel thirst, they don't feel hunger. They just hang around there and don't unless they get out, they just remain there forever. And they don't feel any pain too. It's very interesting. I don't know if you know David Paulides. He wrote a lot of books on people who vanish in national parks in the US. The Missing 411 series of books. He did a lot of research, and I really like him for his efforts. And I think one explanation of some of his cases is that people got sucked into this parallel universe. Because what he describes, like people who just suddenly vanish, and then their corpse appear in far places, and that they couldn't really, they couldn't have like walk that far away in that short of time, or maybe hiked onto that high altitude, and it really explains that maybe the people got sucked into this parallel universe, and then somehow they got out at another location. There are other cases in which people who vanish out of thin air. There was a case in a few hundred years ago in the U.S., 200 years ago in the U.S., in which a family, the son, the young child, was getting some water from a well, and then he walked. It was snowing, and then it's actually described in the book as well. And I found that actual case. There were actually 2 cases in which they're very similar to what's described in the case. So, and then the young child just disappeared out of a sudden. And then because it was snowing, people could just follow the footprints of the snow. But then the footprints just disappeared in the middle of nowhere. But the family members heard him, like yelling, and heard him saying something. But the sound kind of got just low and low. It's kind of like near midair or something that they couldn't really hear very clearly, but they know that it's his voice, his sound. That really kind of make me think that young child probably got sucked into a parallel universe. There was one more evidence. David Paulides said that there were cases in which when they found a corpse, it felt that it seemed to him that the corpse or the person didn't feel any pain, and they walked to the bones. The bones appeared. Normally, like if a person would feel pain, the person wouldn't really like hurt him or herself. Like the bones really appeared in that sense. But what he found out, David Paulides found out that the corpse really had a lot of injuries that a normal person wouldn't really do to themselves. So this is something very interesting in the book.
the fact that you translated this into Chinese and it's now, is it still the #1 seller or bestseller? Or?
It is one of the best sellers in Taiwan and also in China. And it's people just love it. There's not a single penny was spent on advertising.
Wow.
Wow.
Read it, loved it.
Yes.
That's amazing.
It is. And that's, to me, that's incredible because of the content. And you come to America and it's all but out of print. I mean, it's under a few different titles.
But I had never heard of the book until
right.
Yeah. So
right. It's not very popular, I would say.
The same, yeah.
And the one that I found was like $70, but he found it under a different title.
Yeah.
So go ahead and show it, and you can find.
So this was printed last year. It looks like 2021.
Okay. Go ahead. And so it's under the Golden Prophecy.
Thiaoouba Prophecy, the Golden Planet.
Right, and then
if you just search the, well, it's hard to spell Thiaoouba, but we'll put it in the description.
Yeah,
we'll put it in the description. The link for this.
Then the original title was Abduction from the Ninth Planet. And there's multiple different translations of it. And I find the whole thing very incredible, actually. And I recommend everybody read the book. We'll put a link for it. I guess you could just go on Amazon. Do you recommend a place to purchase the book?
Yes, I recommend people going through Amazon to purchase a book. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, there you go. That's what I did.
Right. Is there anything else that you would like to share about the book or the messages? I mean, we don't have to wrap this up right now. If you had more to share.
I think the timing is very interesting because if you really know about the book of Enoch, Enoch was taken by what they call God. According to Michel Desmarquet, Enoch was taken by the same group of people, the Thiaoubans. And when Michel Desmarquet read the book of Enoch, he immediately believed that Enoch was taken by the Thiaoubans to Thiaoouba because there were a lot of resemblance in the descriptions of where Enoch was going to. Remember, Noah was the great-grandson of Enoch. So if you really do a lot of research on the timeline, after Enoch was told to write a book, a few decades later, then Noah was told to build an ark. So Michel Desmarquet wrote this book in the late 80s. He was taken by the Thiaoubans in 1987, and he wrote a book in 1989. So if you do the calculation, you'll know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we didn't even get into life on Thiaoouba. Like there's an entire section of the book that explains that planet and their technology and what it's like there, which is absolutely always fascinating to learn about other planets, in my opinion. But they also took him to other Earth-like planets that had suffered like a nuclear holocaust and with large insectoid beings and things of that nature, things that we always hear about other experiencers talking about. He witnessed a lot of that himself. And they gave him like the ability to see auras, the ability to understand all languages just by activating his third eye. It's a gift that he lost upon his return. The book is full of all kinds of very interesting stuff, and I recommend everybody go check it out. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, man. This was a lot of fun, incredible information, profound. And we appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you for translating it so this message can get out far and wide. I'm sure the Thiaoubans are proud of you.
Yes, and if you know any other people that I can share the book to, please let me know too.
Yeah. Well, so
absolutely.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. We will do that. Guys, go check out this book. Highly recommend it if you haven't already bought it by now. Thank you so much for joining us today, Samuel. Thank you guys for listening. And I want to thank you guys who have been donating to us. We don't give you a shout out enough, but we appreciate the donations. We really do. Like I always say, we couldn't do this without you. We truly love you guys. This is a passion project, and you guys are the reason we're still doing it. So thank you. And until next time, have a great evening. Have a great evening, Samuel. And we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, guys.